The closest we came to the dream was when we were doing THX and everybody was writing their scripts. Everybody was hanging out at the pool table drinking cappuccinos and waxing philosophically about the New World Order and everything.
Agenda 21 is one of the major tools that the New World Order is going to use to establish this one world system. It was put together at Rio de Janeiro at the Earth Summit and was published in 1993. Agenda 21 was originally called Sustainable Development and was promoted as a solution to humanity's problems. At the meeting, there were 178 nations that signed the document, and George H.W. Bush signed for the United States. Bill Clinton would later sign an executive order stating that every state and community in America must comply with the plans of Agenda 21. This agenda largely focuses on population control and depopulation. There are key words used such as population stabilization and sustainable development, which are just smokescreens for the true agenda that is at play. This sustainability plan is focused on controlling world land use, education, and control of the population, including depopulation. One of the main goals is the restructuring of the family unit and placing the children into the hands of the state, which is a very important step for this agenda. If the state has control over the children, then it can indoctrinate the children into complete state control rather than the family unit. And they are dangerously close with that. As it is clearly evident, children are the future of the world, so if the children are controlled into supporting the state, then the future will play out in the interest of this agenda. Although Agenda 21 is largely focused on depopulation, it is also massively focused on how to control the population and keep it in line. Agenda 21 also details the living spaces of humans and the abolishing of private property. This will result in citizens being crammed and packed into tight living spaces in high-rise apartment buildings with small rooms. Cars and other such automobiles will most likely not be allowed, while there will be railways set up and put in place. This aligns with the America 2050 mega regions being connected together by railways. And if you haven't seen that, I recommend you look into it. Many of these high-rise apartments have already been built, and more people are moving into apartments. And this is also because of the economy and all those reasons. The agenda is to have us each crammed into tight spaces, our children controlled by the state, and the population kept in check. In the Agenda 21 document, it speaks of how most of the population will be living in large cities as a result of a crisis, and although the document was written to paint this agenda in a good light, the true meaning behind this plan is not as it looks on the surface. The powers that be do not want people living alone in structured family units out in nature, supporting themselves. But instead, they want the entire population kept in large city developments where we are constantly controlled. Which is kinda how it is now. At 7.13 of the Sustainable Development document on page 47, it says, "By the turn of the century, the majority of the world's population will be living in cities," which is pretty much true. While urban settlements, particularly in developing countries, are showing many of the symptoms of the global environment and development crisis, they nevertheless generate 60% of the gross national product, and if properly managed, can develop the capacity to sustain their productivity, improve the living conditions of their residents, and manage natural resources in a sustainable way. Another goal of the agenda is to have complete and total dominance over the farmland and the overall food source. We can also see this with the CEO of Nestle wanting to have control over all of the Earth's water supply. But taking control and becoming the main source of food for humanity is crucial to the plan. They do not want civilians and farmers making food and being self-sustainable without the state, so the rulers want to step in and take control over the entirety of the source. This is sort of like how the governor of Michigan banned seeds during this whole quarantine. Just something to think about. We see this agenda playing out right now with farmers being kicked off their land for means of the state. They want us off the land. They want complete control over the food, and they want humanity to become dependent on the one world system in order to eat. The document specifically speaks of this as intensifying the agriculture land use to help meet the demands of the future. Not only do they want control over the farmland, but also the natural land as well. These psychos want dominance over nature and all land use and land resources, so they can control human activity. People always talk about the profit motive and how these psychos just want money. And I hear that every once in a while, but it goes way deeper than that. These people want to control everything. The very food that you eat, they want to control. They don't want you growing your own food. These people are psychos. At 14.25 of the Sustainable Development Document, it says, agriculture needs to be intensified to meet future demands for commodities and to avoid further expansion onto marginal lands and encroachment on fragile ecosystems. Increased use of external inputs and development of specialized production and farming systems tend to increase vulnerability to environmental stresses and market fluctuations. There is therefore a need to intensify agriculture by diversifying the production systems for maximum efficiency in the utilization of local resources, while minimizing environmental and economic risk. Where intensification of farming systems is not possible, other on-farm and off-farm employment opportunities should be identified and developed, such as cottage industries, wildlife utilization, aquaculture and fisheries, non-farm activities such as light village-based manufacturing, farm commodity processing, agribusiness, recreation and tourism, etc. So there it is. Control over the population is one of the main goals of this agenda, including packing the population into these high-rise buildings. Depopulation plays a large role in this, and keeping the human population limited to a certain amount. Oddly enough, the Georgia Guidestones say something about we need to keep humanity's population beneath 500 million people, and obviously somebody built those things, and I think they're telling us what the plan is. In Agenda 21, depopulation is going to play a part along with controlling the land resources and children. Bill Gates, who is a member of the Bilderberg Group, has spent millions of dollars on Common Core education, which is also taking over control of education. This agenda has been in the making for years, and we are beginning to see it unfold in front of our eyes. The true leaders of our world want control over everything, from our food and land, and they won't stop until they get it. But this is also why we are here, to stop these people before they take control over everything. But it's getting hard, man. Alright, now let's move on to Agenda 2030. Agenda 2030, much like its predecessor Agenda 21, is the newly reformed goals of sustainable development, presented once again. On September 25th, 2015, the United Nations held an assembly with 193 nations adopting the 2030 Development Resolution. Agenda 2030 is officially titled Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The agenda consists of 17 goals with 169 targets. Many of the goals involve resolving poverty, hunger, war, and even many things to do with social differences, such as gender. However, just as it is titled, the main goal of this agenda is to transform our world by the year 2030. Agenda 2030 didn't take full effect until January of 2016, but this plan is to work hard during the years leading up to 2030. and to change the world for the goals of this sustainable development. Much of Agenda 2030 is the same goals as Agenda 21, but it is only being re-emphasized to keep pushing the goals for the future world. How do you think sustainable development and the nations of the world are going to feed all the hungry people? Do you think the nations are going to ask their farmers to grow food for these people, and however much the farmers of the world provide, they will get paid and receive benefits? No, of course not. Just like the goals of Agenda 21 and the New World Order, Agenda 2030 wants the one world government to be the only food source and the only source of shelter. The same goes for every other aspect, such as water and land. They want complete control over the human resources, and this agenda is simply just pushing it further. The document of sustainable development is disguised by the United Nations as a harmonious act of peace to solve the issues of the world. Meanwhile, these same psychopaths are the ones creating the problems to begin with. It's order out of chaos, and the agenda is to create the problem, react to it, and then offer up some solution for the people of the world to blindly accept. And they will. Sadly. Agenda 2030 is also going to push for population control and to have most citizens living in large cities in high-rise apartments. Yet again, this is something else that we're seeing. Agenda 2030 shows how quickly the world rulers want to implement their agenda and how fast they want to push for their goals. They want total control and dominance over everything, and this agenda is set in place to keep pushing for the coming one world government. The one world government is quickly becoming a reality, and it is our job to stop it before it's too late. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen the recent Elon Musk, Joe Rogan podcast, but some of the things Elon Musk is working on, talking about putting an implant in the human brain, which is going to solve all of our problems. Bro, I don't trust these people. I don't trust these people at all. And how long until that becomes mandatory? How long until they start saying it's child abuse to not put one of these chips in your kid because you're depriving them of all these amazing things that they're missing out on? It's definitely something to check out and to be very cautious of. Also, speaking of this whole human confinement in tight living spaces, if you haven't seen the movie THX 1138, it was made in like 1971, like before Star Wars and all that, and it is pretty crazy. I mean, these people are living in basically boxes, and that's just the normal. So, if you want to get an idea of what things are going to look like, check that movie out. But anyways, that's it for me. Until next time.
It basically implanted in your skull, so but it would be flush with your skull. So you basically take out a chunk of skull, put the Neuralink device in there. You'd put the electrode, you'd insert the electrode threads very carefully into the brain, and then you stitch it up, and you wouldn't even know that somebody has it. And so that it can interface basically anywhere in your brain. So it could be something that helps cure, say, eyesight, like returns your eyesight, even if you've like lost your optic nerve type of thing.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Hearing, obviously. I mean, pretty much anything that it could, in principle, fix almost anything that is wrong with the brain. Yeah, and you'd replace that, say, 1-inch diameter piece of skull with this Neuralink device, and that has a battery and a Bluetooth and an inductive charger, and then you also got to insert the electrodes. So the electrodes are very carefully inserted with our robot that we developed, that's very carefully putting in the electrodes and avoiding any veins or arteries, so it's doesn't create trauma.
So through this 1-inch diameter
Yeah.
device, electrodes be inserted and they will find their way
Like tiny wires, basically.
Tiny wires.
Tiny wires.
And they'll find their way to specific areas of the brain to stimulate?
No, you literally put them where they're supposed to go.
Oh, okay.
And that's it.
Will this
Then-
be replaceable or reversible?
Yeah.
Like if someone can't take it
Yeah,
anymore?
yeah, you can
I'm
take-
too
take-
smart. I can't take it.
Yeah, you can totally take it out. I mean, ultimately, if you want to go with full AI symbiosis, you'll probably want to do something like that.
Symbiosis is a scary word when it comes to AI.
It's optional.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, once you enjoy the Dr. Manhattan lifestyle, once you become a god, seems very, very unlikely you're going to want to go back to being stupid again. I mean, you literally could fundamentally change the way human
Yeah.
beings interface with each other.
Yes.
Yes.
You wouldn't need to talk.
When you said you won't have to talk to each other anymore, we used to joke around about that. I've joked around about that a million times on this podcast, that one day in the future there's going to come a time where you can read each other's minds.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you'll be able to interface with each other in some sort of a non-verbal, non-physical way, where you will transfer data back and forth to each other without having to actually use your mouth
yeah,
and make noises.
Exactly.
What's wrong? What's wrong?
I need something stronger.
Take 4 red capsules.